Hi there, everybody. I'm Richard Wise, and I work as brand anthropologist at Geometry Global. Welcome to this morning's session. We're especially honored that you came today, despite the terrible weather. And no, seriously, and I know this is a really depressing setting, so you've demonstrated your commitment and brave that. I was talking with one of my panelists about the irony of going on a yacht to discuss how brands can embed themselves in popular culture. And I was like thinking, yachts and popular culture, I think that's like where the villain is. Why am I on the villain's boat? So yeah, we're honored that you came. Thanks for being here. This is what I call the con of Apollo. Last night was the con of Bacchus. And so if you've come here and you're here to have the cool light of reason shine upon your intellect, we again salute you. So our topic, commerce killed the brand experience star. In 1981, that's when MTV aired that music video by Bruce Woolley. Video killed the radio star. And why did they choose that? A new medium was being born. The old rules of success were being replaced. So will we sing the same wistful song in the years going forward? Is commerce killing the brand experience star? Everybody like metaphors? So to illuminate this topic, I have an amazing panel of thought leaders for you. I have Alicia Carey, who's the Global Agency Director at Microsoft, and she's helping some of the biggest brands in the world use technology to embed themselves in everything from search to email to gaming. And I have Carolyn McKeever, who's Shell's Global Head of Downstream Communication. She leads the customer comms of one of the world's largest retailers with 44,000 locations serving 25 million customers a day. And then Beth Ann, who is our new CEO of Geometry. And we're calling ourselves an end-to-end commerce agency conceived, as we say, to activate brands at the speed of life. We have over 50 end market offices, and we're the largest such network in the world. So think about it. You've got here global, digital, commerce, brand experience, and an aspiring comedian. This is truly the right panel for today's topic. So can I start with you, Beth Ann? I love that you've been CMO of Westfield and have launched Westfield and also Brookfield World Trade Center, and then CEO of Kantar Consulting, and now here you are at Geometry. So here's the question to you: the way that commerce is being rationalized. And when I say commerce, I mean, just how we buy things and services, right? But the way it's being rationalized, streamlined, driven by algorithmic precision, is that sapping all of the experience out of it, or is it creating new opportunities for us?
Yeah, I'm in the camp of it creates new opportunities for us, I guess, though that's pretty predictable. I'll go back to my CMO experience at Westfield and start there, because sometimes the data doesn't just tell us what the people that we can understand want, but it can actually tell us who we're missing. So at Westfield, we had no data, believe it or not, and we were always trying to pull it from the retailers, and there was this sort of tension that existed because they owned the data. And I said, well, we need to figure this out for ourselves, and we need to get better ways of tracking, not just knowing how many people are walking through the mall, but actually who is walking through. And just doing my own store walks, I could tell like something was missing. And so I needed a concrete way to tell that story to the rest of the executives. And I'll tell you who was missing: the tweens and the teens, especially the young women. Does anybody have a tween or a teen in their life? Like even niece or nephew, right? Like, are they going to the mall anymore? And do you think malls can survive without them? Believe it or not, that took convincing to my executives because they thought there was actually a new shopper. I'm like, there's no way you have a future if you don't get tween girls here. Also because they have the power for the rest of the family. So sometimes the rationalization of data is also to tell us like what's missing in the data and to help make a case to say, okay, just business-wise, what do we need to do? And I'll just give you a short answer to what do we do. So what we recognized was they were home watching their YouTube videos and being influenced about what they were to buy or what they were coveting to buy based on watching what other people were shopping. Even people were shopping and unpacking and unboxing at home. So what we did is we created editing studios in the center of all of our locations where people could come and make their own videos after their shopping trip, and they could become live celebrities and YouTube artists and influencers themselves and show what they purchased from The Gap or J. Crew or Claire's or whatever the store was, Justice. And so they were creating their own ability to influence and bring people in. And we didn't stop there. We actually created installations behind them. So there was these really cool, culturally relevant art elements that were right behind them. So people were also seeing there was kind of like a selfie YouTube moment. So that was also, people wanted to get their photos behind that. So they were coming in for that reason as well. And we just started to see this new generation come in because it was purpose for them in our space again. So I think that's what data does, is it allows us to be more clear about what the executions need to be. And I'll just hit World Trade Center really quickly because you've got this incredible, I don't know if anyone's been down there to see World Trade Center now that it actually exists, Westfield World Trade Center in Brookfield. But a lot of it you don't see when you come down there. You see this huge, incredible Oculus Calatrava structure that's this feat of architectural brilliance during our lifetime that was created down there. But actually it's intimidating, it's a little scary, it's not approachable. And so what we needed to do was actually create street art and wayfinding that brought you in. And that was another big deal thing, like to convince the city of New York and the Port Authority that you had to actually put street art and allow graffiti artists and people from around the urban areas of New York to come in and make that a place where actually outside of the very thing that we were trying to attract people to needed to be the first point that was much more inviting and experiential. And so that's where you start to see the linkage that actually the commerce solution oftentimes is an experience answer.
So that's amazing. With the tweens, that strategy, it was actually the opposite of efficient because you were making the experience richer by what you served up to them. You didn't make it faster. You didn't make it easier.
This is why Richard's here, because he can translate for the rest of us what it was that we just said in this really winding, long story. That's the takeaway.
That's the takeaway.
Yeah.
It was basically, it doesn't always have to be efficient, but it does have to be culturally relevant in the case of that development. Love that story. All right, potentially opposing that, Carolyn. I know that Shell's strategy is to treat every visitor as a guest, but I can't think of a retail experience that is more in and out than buying something at a gas station. So how do you reconcile speed and convenience with, you call it the guest experience? How are you serving up a guest experience when most people just want to get the hell out of there? And how do you do it on a massive scale? And how do you make a memorable impression?
Okay, so I would say that question is in two parts, and half of the customers do want to just get on and off the forecourt as quickly as possible. And so what we've done is we've tried to make that even faster. So the ambition is that people can get in and out in like 6 to 8 minutes. And we've got technology now, which is my favorite product, as a busy working mum, able to get onto the site. It's an app based. It's a bit like Uber, where you've registered your card, you drive onto the site, you open up the app, you're geolocated to a pump, you say I'm at pump 4, get out, fill up, get back in, 60 litres later. And my particular favourite moment is when I'm at the forecourt and people are looking at me and then they see me just drive off. And they're like, that woman totally did not pay for her petrol. And I am not a rule breaker. I am not a rule breaker. You probably would know that I work for Shell, right? So this is this moment, what I call the Bonnie and Clyde moment. And so in quite a few of our markets, we've launched that. The great thing for us was we did that to put the customer in control. We know they want to get in and out really quickly. But they spend more money. Those customers spend more money because, like with Uber, you're not actually handing any cash over. So there is a real upside for us with that. The flip side to that is that people need to take a break. right? I've actually taken my iWatch off because it kept telling me to breathe and stand up and do things that I thought I'd already mastered as a human. But I have a car as well, which says to me, you've been driving for 90 minutes, you now need to stop. So take a break. And that's the other side. So lots of customers just need to take a break. They need to have a coffee. They need to tune into the Wi-Fi. They need to relax. So we have to do that as well. And with the advent of electric charging, people are going to be on site for 20 minutes. So we've spent years perfecting the fastest in and out, the spacing between pumps, how quickly you can pump the gas, how our staff treat you. And now we've got this entirely different customer who's going to be hanging about for 20 minutes needing to do something. So there's some duality there for us. But the biggest thing about the experience, I think, is that they're in control. So if they want to get in and out, we do that. And if they want to relax and have a nice coffee and really clean toilets, we're all about the clean toilets at Shell service stations, that they have that as well. So that's kind of where the experience plays.
Awesome. What's the name of the app?
It's just on the Shell app, but the service is called Fill Up and Go.
Fill Up and Go.
We're probably not winning any creative lions for that one, but it is, it does what it says on the tin.
There's a challenge out there for all of you.
Yeah.
Well, actually, if I may share back, I heard a really great brief. Those of you who are agency partners of mine, suppose you got a brief and it said, make Fill Up and Go famous, and the brand emotion is, I feel like Bonnie and Bonnie and Clyde. That's a pretty good brief.
It's a great brief.
But
Feel free to come back to me.
Although I hope the day after the briefing you don't go, that's not what I meant. That was just a personal experience. Alicia, the Xbox adaptive controller launch captured all of our hearts with its brilliant focus on empathy and inclusiveness, all the way down to how the packaging works. So what is that great success teaching brands about how the experience communicates brand values?
Yeah, so I think ideally with any company or with any brand, there should be very little space between what does the company stand for, their mission and their purpose, and then how that's articulated through brand experience. So you mentioned the adaptive controller. Microsoft took a new CEO 5 years ago. His name is Satya Nadella. He has a son who is profoundly disabled with cerebral palsy. And if you hear Satya speak, he says that was the impetus or the beginning of him gaining immense empathy. So as he comes into the CEO role, one of the first things he did was define a very clear mission. And that mission was empower every person and every organisation on the planet to achieve more. It's on the back of our staff badges. I mean, it's not something anyone working for the company is not able to articulate immediately. So we had this very clear mission at the beginning. Then from there, you start to think from a culture perspective in the company, how do you activate that? We run hackathons. And these opportunities give developers and people in marketing, people who don't code, the chance to come together and work on projects. We have an employee who had been doing some work with an organisation that was working with military veterans who had lost limbs. And he came to the hackathon and he said, I want to enable gaming for people who are unable to use traditional controllers. The first hackathon was in 2016, a subsequent one in 2017, but the output was the Xbox adaptive controller. For anyone who's not familiar with it, it's a controller that enables the addition of multiple switches, buttons, mounts, joysticks, other things, to enable people who maybe don't have the use of their arms, either through a congenital defect or maybe they're nursing and they can't game. So back to brand experience. This controller, from a product point of view, is adaptive, but I think the thing that was powerful about it was it went end to end. So the packaging was built in a way that a person with one hand could open it. And it's in the Palais this week multiple times for a couple of Lions. But I think experience has to live throughout the journey. It can't be just the product itself. It has to be the packaging. It means if I'm going to the Microsoft website and I want to understand more about it, the website needs to be accessible. So if you're colorblind, it's in tones that you can see. So I think it's an end-to-end situation. That's what we found with the controller. The power of that was living our company mission and bringing that through the experience of the brand and the promo.
And it was a pleasure to hear your colleague Kathleen Hall speak yesterday about how this focus on values at Microsoft not only made the share go up dramatically, but she shared with us it also saved her marriage because they use that focus in couples counseling. You can be wildly different, but if you share the same values, you can really get somewhere. Isn't that cool?
I don't even know what to say to that. I can't believe she shared that publicly.
She did. She
That's
did.
Extraordinary.
Yeah. Well, it's real. Yeah. Carolyn and Beth Ann, where do you see examples of this focus on inclusion and empathy going all the way into the end-to-end experience?
You want to start? Okay. I think part of it is what we're seeing in the future of where retail is going and commerce experiences is the ability to customize, to personalize, and to tailor both experience and product. And do that in, without being not sustainable, but in more rapid fire ways. So I'm not talking like fast fashion, but I am talking about the ability in lower quantities to get more targeted about what it is that individuals want and to be able to reflect, I'm going to be different just like everybody else kind of mentality, which is, Mac has lived in that space, Apple has lived in that space for a long time. And that sense of like, I'm part of a community, but I'm actually seeing my own identity there. So I think that's one of the ways that we're seeing leveraging the empathy insight, if you will, into where is that going to go next. And I think even mass brands are going there. And we've seen that, of course, Coke has done that really well. We have some of our Coke clients in the audience with whether it's the adding your name to a can or adding cultural relevant identifications and imagery to the can that I feel like I'm part of that community, even in a bigger, stronger way, enforcing my feeling of connection to that brand and to each other. Car companies have done that really well, and we've seen some examples on the floor this week of that. I think the other thing that I would say there is, and this came from my time at Cantor Consulting, I've long time been on a board of a company called Back on My Feet, which is for homeless people who are experiencing homelessness. And we dug into the brand work for them. And this is a company a foundation that's been around for a decade now. And everybody was thinking that the guiding principle was around this sense of community, belonging. It uses running to actually help address people who are experiencing homelessness and literally get them back on their feet, both through housing and then ultimately through jobs. It's incredible and it's effective. And the insight that we came out with from the qualitative and deep research that we did at Kantar was the empathy point that we understood was no one ever had expectations on these people before. So part of the way our foundation works is we have to literally get up for a run at 5:30, 3 days a week, and that's how they earn points. Earn points for training, on points for interviews, for LinkedIn optimization or creating a LinkedIn page if it's the first time. And it's incredible to hear these people talk about, it was the first time in my life I've let myself down. Everyone in my family, all my friends, my network has all let me down at different stages of my life. And you were the first group that actually made me expect more from myself, that made me show up and made me want to show up for something. So sometimes that's why I think the data and the digging for the insight is really important, because sometimes the empathy that makes us want to act isn't what we see at face value, isn't at the surface. And the last really quick example is we like to talk about moments that matter at Geometry. And one of the things that the team loves talking about as an example is sometimes that moment isn't the obvious moment. You take a mom that just had a new baby, and if you're a brand trying to attract her attention might be actually 4:00 in the morning after a feeding when she's either, lulling the baby back to sleep or she herself can't get back to sleep. And so she's surfing Facebook or Instagram for ideas and inspiration or Pinterest. And that's the moment that you actually have a chance to create both an experience for her that feels relevant and an ability to convert.
Wow. And that's another great example of insight. No one expected anything from them. And it's like totally counterintuitive that I'm at a homeless shelter now. Beth Ann walks up to me and says, "We're going for the morning run." By the way, does that mean I have to start running now? Am I cool? And Carolyn?
So I think there's always more that you can do for customers. And I was saying to you earlier, wasn't I? I have had a massive penny drop moment this week where I learned for the first time that 15% of the population, 1 billion people, are living with a disability. And if you'd asked me to give you that percentage number before I heard it, I think I would have probably gone 1%. I don't even know if I would have gone 1%. So I've had this like amazing kind of epiphany on, right, we need to do a lot more here, right? 15% is not a niche customer group, okay? That's quite an important point. But I think we can do a lot more. There are things that we do to let customers know if there's more than one person serving on site, or if there's just one person serving on site, because that person can't shut the shop and shut the entire thing so that they can go and help them pump gas or whatever. So there are things that we do. We could definitely do more. But I think for us, when I think about the empathy, it's more for we call them service champions. We've got 500,000 service champions at Shell Retail. So 500,000 people globally. And we expect a lot from them. We're an international oil company. We expect them to turn up, to have a clean uniform, for it to be pressed, make sure that it's looking in good condition. We expect them to say hello. We expect them to present an offer. We expect them to say thank you. And actually, in some markets, we have to explain to them how to smile, which sounds like strange to us marketing folk, because we love to smile, don't we? But maybe they haven't got quite so much to smile about as us. And so one of the things that we've done is in lots of countries, well, firstly, we train them. We do a lot of training, focus on the service champions. But secondly, things like we've put washing machines and tumble dryers and ironing boards and things there so that they can do that. We have an international oil company expectation on your uniform, but if you live in one room with your entire family, including your parents, maybe you haven't got room for the latest Whirlpool washing machine. So things like that are really important, and that's us as a brand, like showing that empathy. And the other piece is that there is now a really strong program for people to come in at our most basic level and pump gas for us as a service champion, but to move all the way through to becoming a retailer, to owning their own business, which is something that, couldn't happen in their wildest dreams for most of these people. But they're the best possible people to run our sites because they know what it's like to pump the gas and to stock the shelves and to make sure that things are safe, right? So this process that we're going through, and from a brand point of view, of course, these people are in their community, they're in their church, they know people, and they can see what Shell are doing for these individuals. So it's a slightly different take on the answer, I think. But that sort of brand empathy is, I think, for us, is much more focused on our staff, our team.
I love the dryers, the tumblers, and the ironing boards. You're almost making that uniform into, like when they go in and start work, they have to do their costume change, don't they?
And
I love, like, as soon as you said crisply pressed, I was, of course, immediately self-conscious the fact that my own trousers are quite wrinkly.
You're in linen, Richard, it's fine.
Yeah, okay, that's fine, it's all right.
Fine.
But as soon as you said that, I felt like almost, like, that sounds like a lot to live up to. And then you immediately told us, no, you make it possible.
Yeah.
And so you can, like, wear that with pride. And that's fantastic, I love that.
Cool.
So a big part of coming here is immersing yourself in the work. Seeing what got entered, seeing what got shortlisted, and ultimately seeing what won. We won't know about experience and activation until tonight, if I'm not mistaken. But we've all had a chance to look at the work. What stood out to you, Alicia?
I'd say as I looked at it, and I love looking at the work, by the way, I had such fun. But I think what was so heartening for me, being in technology, there is this extremely heartening thread that runs through all the work, and that's how technology is enabling brand experience. And I saw it across categories. It wasn't just in the technology category. It was across CSR. It was across all parts of branded experience. There was one campaign I loved particularly. It was for the parents of road victims. It was a campaign out of Belgium. I don't know how it'll do tonight, but it enabled you to enter a typical phrase that you might type into your phone on text to someone as you're driving. I'm going to the store before I come home, or I'll be there in an hour, or whatever it is that you text. And this campaign enabled you to enter the phrase into the site, as well as the speed limit that you would be doing at that time. It had Google Maps integration, so you could identify where you were, and you could visually see to type that duration of message at that speed, how far you were going to travel while you were doing that. And it actually showed you might start at Smith Street and you would end up 500 metres down the road at Jones Street. And there was something ridiculously powerful to me about this thought of, I'm blind that whole 500 metres that I'm typing, and because of the maps integration, I can see my car moving, and I have no clue what's going on around me. So that campaign ended up getting adopted by I don't know the name of it in Belgium, but essentially the program that teaches teenagers how to drive. And and for someone who has a teenager who's just starting to drive, it was the first time that I even thought myself, goodness, that whole period I'm blind. So just such a nice example of how technology is enabling the category. The other thing that really struck for me was how brands are bringing in the zeitgeist of the moment into the work. And again, it wasn't just in the CSR category, it was across all, and it was things like gun control in the US, popped a lot, fake news. So how are brands tapping into the zeitgeist of the culture and reflecting it back through the brand, I thought was powerful because it's just so relevant.
Awesome. And sometimes with high purpose and sometimes just for fun.
Yeah, exactly, and we talked about that.
Yesterday for the way that Wendy's completely terrorized all freezers in Fortnite, and within just a few days had rid the world of this scourge.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's a risk of going just the very heavy onerous side. You know, you look at the Nike work, which has done so well this week, the Colin Kaepernick work. It's heavy, right? The issue's heavy, and so thank you for countering it with something lighter.
What popped for you, Carolyn?
So the work, you're right. I mean, you go down there and you have a look at the work, and it's just such an amazing environment to be in, this world that we're in, such a privilege. But for me, what I do is I like to look at the retailers, see what the retailers are doing. Burger King, of course, is just the absolute monster in terms of I don't know if there are any McDonald's people here, but I'm so glad that I don't have Burger King on my tail, because they just are making fun, like a lot of fun, being really clear about we're not McDonald's, we're something completely different. The thought of sending people to a McDonald's to within sort of reaching distance of a Big Mac in order to get a coupon for a Whopper to drive off and buy a Whopper is just extraordinary, and Rita having really good fun with it, which I thought was brilliant. But the thing that I like was the Nike Google tie-up. And this is my dream of being able to pretty much, and you've told me actually that you have a product for this, so I'm now delighted to hear that I don't need to solve this problem for myself. But the idea that you could launch a shoe and link it to Google and say, hey, Google, what's that shoe? And it will tell you. And then because Google know who you are, you don't have to put your credit card details in for the 9 millionth time and try and remember your password and find the credit card that hasn't expired, and by which time you've lost all interest in the shoe and what you were doing. I've been sidetracked by that point to something else. But I just think that creating that seamlessness between, I've seen that, I want it, I just want it to come now. I don't want to get involved in anything else. And I just think that's brilliant. And I loved to see that. And I need that. I feel like I need that in my life.
Yes, it is brilliant. And so is your description of the perfect purchase decision journey. And so we went through all of the different boxes, then it ends with, anyway, I'm thinking about something else.
Well, I'll actually jump off of that because I agree 100%. And I think that before we used to think about putting commerce into the equation was going to be friction. And now actually the challenge is how do we make it frictionless? Because actually what's more disruptive for somebody is if they can't buy and they want to. So I think we have to think through that and recognize we have to, like when we talk about is the funnel, does it exist? Has it been flipped? I think it's really about collapsing it as much as possible. And a lot of the great work was examples of where the funnel has actually been collapsed and the friction has been removed in order to allow you to go have an immediate purchase and to act on your desire. The other thing, which is not necessarily the ability to immediately act, but certainly measurable, which is like a brand like Wendy's, and that was work done in the WPP family, where you take a brand that's been around for a long time and they've tried to revive it in a couple of different ways, not outside of our family, I think it's been tried and not been effective. And now when they've got it into the gaming space and they recognized, again, similar to the Westfield story about the tween, the right target, the right audience in the right way, and the brand comes back in a big way and you see it in sales and you just see this brand affinity just shoot up. Is incredible to see. And I was really loving the kind of taking things that we've seen for years, like even the Pepsi Coke competitiveness, the Burger King McDonald's competitiveness, and using new tools and technology to express those same brand truths that we've all felt and known in marketing and media messaging, and then just see it come to life in new ways. And I guess that's the only prompt that I would say as we go into next year that I thought was missing. Was the partners in Facebook and Pinterest and Twitter and Instagram, Google, they've all been, Bing and Microsoft, so open and inviting to the creative community to actually say, learn our APIs, hack our technology, use it for creativity. That's why we need each other. And I don't think we're seeing enough of it. So I would, not in a way that technology is visible, but technology is an enabler of an experience and an ability to do something you could never have done before, and really leveraging these platforms and the APIs and having creative technologists that can go deep enough to understand these systems and what the possibility with them are, because this is people-centric, right? Our end consumers are there. That's their environment. They're living it all the time. And if we can communicate to them, leveraging those, I think that's where we all need to go as an industry together.
Very cool.
Can I just add one thing?
Yes, please.
Was also that the impressions were like billions and billions. Like that was the bit as well. We were looking at the work yesterday, a few of us, and a few years ago it was like a few million, and you're like, oh, doing really well there. And yesterday it was like 7.4 billion, 5.8 billion, and that just seems to be just extraordinary what's happening there with the scale of how much this work's getting viewed, seen, and that the reach is just extraordinary.
All right, you want to play speed round? Let me pop a couple of questions to you, drawing upon your vast and very complimentary experience base. So just give me a quick answer and a Twitter-size insight. Can I start with you, Beth Ann? Amazon 2025, bigger or smaller?
Well, definitely bigger, but I think it's going to get pushed by Alibaba. So I think more and more as Alibaba's going global, we're going to feel the pressure, and it's going to put Amazon on its heels.
Going to be fun to watch.
Yes.
Carolyn?
Definitely bigger. Yeah. 15-year-old daughter who ordered 2 Prit sticks. I don't know if any of you know what that is. On Prime the other day, they arrived. I'm like, we're ordering Prit through Prime. This is out of control. So bigger.
Bigger, but beware the regulators. Microsoft was hit badly in '97 by the Department of Justice. I think there's an antitrust risk.
I feel like I'm at an analyst conference now. Not sure I'd buy that. Instagram, are they just going to keep on being a FOMO server upper, or are they going to become a new kind of retailer?
Well, bringing that back to Amazon, I was with them yesterday, and every single person that I was talking to at Amazon was talking about how much they're buying on Instagram. So I would vote for it. It is definitely naturally in the commerce space, and we're going to see way more of that, and especially with the direct-to-consumer explosion that we've already seen, I think we're going to absolutely see that happen even more through Instagram.
Paying off that thing you talked about, eliminating friction.
What Beth said. Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say for sure, but just potentially not just a retailer. I mean, social is changing so quickly in how people are using the platforms. It might be something in 6 years that it looks nothing like today. So I think, yeah, potentially it's a retailer, potentially it's something else as well.
What might that be?
I wouldn't even go there. I don't
Okay.
know. Get back to me in 6 years.
Okay.
You had a tweet.
Pop-ups. Flash in the pan, new part of the mix.
Well, it's not a new part of the mix, but I think absolutely here to stay. I think it's actually going to be more on High Street. I mean, anybody live in New York, actually New York or London, like how many businesses and retailers are out of business? Like there's just these like blank stores sitting there. So I think we're going to push the real estate market to figure this out. And I think we're going to see way more pop-up on High Street. It's just going to be new sizing, new formats, and again, driven by experience.
Cool.
As a consumer, pop-ups are great for me personally. For our business, I don't think we're in the pop-up world. So for us, pop-ups not so much, but as a consumer, I think they're brilliant. Yeah, and on commute, I go through train stations quite a lot, and it's just great. Every time you go into a train station, there's something new to look at. So definitely part of the mix going forward.
So if I
Just not Shell retail.
So if I see a brief for a Shell pop-up, I should know that it's either a disaster impending or
Correct.
it's a brilliant breakthrough.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
One of those two.
What do you think?
I'd say for sure, anyone who lives in the US and does spinning at SoulCycle, the fact that they have bikes this year at the Palais and all the 7 a.m. classes are on wait list, enough said. Pop-ups work.
Enough said. So data-driven marketing, is it helpful or harmful to the richness of the brand experience?
Well, I think we've said that. It's helpful. But I think that you can't forget intuition and instinct and push the data and the narrative. A data alone is definitely not the answer.
Yeah, I need to go before you. You'd ask me first next time.
Okay.
So I agree entirely. But this thing about it's your business as well. You've got the data. I've got the same data BP's got, that Exxon's got. We've all got the same data, but how I deal with it, I have to deal with it in the Shell way, and it needs to be authentically Shell. So I have to put that lens, the Shell Soul lens onto it, yeah.
Awesome. Alicia.
Helpful, but as a consumer, let me control what data I give you, how you use it, where you store it, even potentially. And I'm happy to take the relevance of experiences, but I want to know how my data is being used.
So it's helpful when but at the condition of being transparent.
Yeah, just use it in the right way.
Carolyn, product drops. Is that just for street fashion, or do you think it's a new trend across categories and channels? What do you think?
Product drops. So, yeah, I think people, kids, my kids, everybody, we all like the next new thing, something different. We were just talking about, you walk along the Croisette, the clothes that are here are the brands that are here and not the clothes that we see in London or in New York. So keeping that fresh, definitely. There's just a thirst for things to be different and new. So I think that's really important, yeah.
The freshness of it.
Freshness, yeah.
Well, we were talking about this lovely WPP space that we have now, and I was saying, where's the merch? And then we were even noticing some of the people within WPP wearing some cool merch that we don't have access to. If there was a closet over there and you guys could purchase, right now the brand's been so elevated, you want a piece of it. So absolutely, but if you just had WPP stuff out there all the time, would you really be going to a website to buy WPP merchandise? I don't think so. Maybe someday. We have some work to do. But today, we want it now. And so I say in that vein, yes.
Yeah, so next year we need a product drop.
Ella, Mark, yep.
Yeah,
got that.
And it's got to have that message.
And all of our creatives can design it.
And it's going to have that message, no plastic. No plastic, man. Okay. What do you say?
I would totally agree. I think there's something all brands can learn from a brand like Supreme. It drops on a Thursday at 12 noon. By 12:02, it's completely sold out. People like my 16-year-old are reselling by 12:04, and they're making margins of 200-300%. So I think it's something that all brands can learn from how Supreme is running their product drop strategy.
So then, influencers and commerce, hype, help?
Yeah, I think it's more influence and commerce. And so it's about social, right? And I mean, so many of the things that we can do now, it's about taking behaviors that have existed, that were fundamentals, and bringing them into new, relevant context. So I absolutely think it's about influence, and some of that might be peer-to-peer. Like, who influences me may not be the same person or type of a person that influences you. So it's not necessarily celebrities or people who have a gazillion followers. It's people who are the right person for the profile.
Another learning for me this can has been how dark lots of the media is getting, and particularly this next generation. So my kids, I have 15-year-old twins, they aren't sharing very much. So I think the only way to get in front of them going forward potentially will be with influencers. So I think it's going to be really important going forward with this next generation of how close they are and the channels that they're accessing and their social channels. Yeah.
I feel like I'm always agreeing. Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I would say word of mouth is the original cornerstone on which marketing was built. Everything changes but stays the same. So, yeah, completely relevant moving forward.
Isn't it interesting that we use the word dark in the marketing community to describe something that is, for example, it's just more intimate? Oh, that's dark. Why? Because it's between me and my friends?
Because we can't get to you.
All right, hey, so who's got a question for our excellent panel? We'll take all comers. You disagree with us about something we said today. You got a burning question. Who's this young man here?
Hi, my question is to Carolyn from Shell. First question.
Go on.
Your brand experiences have obviously, you've got a transformational future ahead of you. Your industry is going through probably in the next 5 to 10 years, probably
Energy
the
transition.
biggest transformation of any industry. And as that transformation becomes dominant and electricity and the power form that drives our cars changes, I'd imagine that your brand experience in the forecourt is going to become something very, very different.
Very.
How much of the future direction that your business is going in is at the heart of where you are now? And are you looking at a sort of future concept to drive your brand experience today?
So, yes, we are. Thank you for your question. We have been running a project, and we have 2 sites, which was the project originally was called Site of the Future, and we changed it to be called Customer Experience of the Site of the Future, because we realised we were already falling into our own trap of what does the site need to be like, what does the site need to be like. So we changed it to Customer Experience of the Site of the Future, and it sort of made it a really long project title, but that was quite an important nuance, I think, because we had to put the customer at the heart of that project. And you're right, but it's back to the duality. It's exactly where we started this conversation. We will still have people coming onto site and wanting, like me, to Bonnie and Clyde it on and off in 4 minutes. And then even with our super fast chargers that we'll have, people will be on site for 20 minutes. And we're not set up for that, because we've streamlined everything to get everybody on and off as quickly as possible. We are we have 2 sites. I'm looking over at my boss, Linda. There's 2 sites now live. Just seeing how different we need to be. We are not at scale with that. We have 44,000 sites. There are 2 of these, right? So we're not at scale, but the customer's not at scale yet either. So in retail, if you go too far ahead of the customer, you just burn a lot of capex, and all the finance guys get on your case and they hate you. So it's definitely something we're doing. And, we need seating areas, we need Wi-Fi, we need different dining experiences. Who knows what we're going to need. And that's what these sites are going to help us do. So it's not at scale, but it's absolutely firmly happening, and it's done in a couple of sites. Does that answer the question?
Yes. Don't you have a follow-up question? How can I go there?
I have lots of follow-up questions, but I'll dominate.
You can find me after.
Thank you for questioning responsibly. One more. This is our last question.
So I have a related question, which is you mentioned about no plastics, and I think that has been a big topic here at Cannes this week. So what are the implications on that from a retail point of view? Because, we're in the business of selling more. You're talking about fast fashion, things like that. How sustainable and what's our responsibility in that, in relation to reducing consumption rather than encouraging increased consumption?
Was that to me?
Yeah.
It was to the panel.
It was to everybody.
I'll let Richard.
So I'll answer very quickly, and then I'm guessing Beth Ann's got an answer. So we've just very recently in the UK did a tie-up with Jamie Oliver. Jamie Oliver was an absolute pain in the butt about his packaging, that it all had to be sustainable all the way through. And we tried to sort of screw it down and go, we could do a bit of this, we could do a bit of that. But he pushed us and pushed us and pushed us brilliantly, because that's his brand. We have then found that, of course, that was exactly the right thing to do, because in this whole last sort of 18 months, it's become this huge topic. And so now we have this completely sustainable product line through Jamie Oliver. But it's also something that we're doing as an organisation from a plastics point of view. We've just donated hundreds of millions of dollars to the Plastic Alliance as an organisation, Shell, to reduce plastic. It's a big problem, and we're becoming much more sustainable as a business. It's going to take some time, lots of recycling efforts, all kinds of things that are going on at site, people refilling their water bottles, as much as we can do. It's a first step, certainly. Lots more to do, but definitely a big part of our ambition.
Yeah, you can look at places where they're already out ahead, like California is a great example. And, you get dirty looks if you were to walk down the street with a plastic bag or a plastic bottle in your hands. But if you're wearing recycled clothes or shoes that were made from plastics, good on you. And I think I heard an interesting stat recently, which is we wouldn't have to produce a single new element of any material product in this world, and we would be fine. So we could literally live off of all the stuff that's already been produced in any form. It's not just plastics, but in rubbers and in materials, and use recycling manufacturing to sustain us. And based on the population development, we would be fine as a world. That just gets your head around that. Every time you buy anything that's just new, that is made from new product, new material, that's a big deal thing. So I think we have to think plastics and then take it further, quite honestly. We have a lovely campaign this year that didn't get the notice that maybe it will next year, because we'll keep building on it, which was around rubbish. And we've got now Walmart behind it, and I'm sure we're going to get some CPGs behind the program as well. But the great thing about a program like that is we get the interaction of people showing us their rubbish that just appalls them. And you just look at that. It's a great stream of just actually intelligence for all of us, just to see how much is out there in all of our countries, and the level of layer and layer upon layer of just really poor decision making when it comes to the supply chain. And then how can we reverse it and be more innovative about it, and use the population to help us in figuring out the innovation, the problem and the innovation.
Hey, thanks for coming this morning and listening to us. Despite the fact that you may have, somewhat incapacitated yourself mentally yesterday evening. It's very nice to see you. And would you please give my panelists a really rousing hand of applause?